Hello, everybody. This is J. Todd Coleman here and Mr. Thomas Blair.
I'm Thomas Blair. I'm the design director. Welcome to our monthly ACE Q&A live stream.
And in the background, we've got Cece and Emily helping us to wrangle this stuff and get all your questions answered. So beta is coming. I'm not starting beta right now. To be clear, beta to us is not necessarily about a particular version. It's about getting enough features and enough stability and quality and frame rate and all that other stuff to where we feel comfortable starting to invite in the, I don't know how many it is, 350 or 400,000 players that have registered at crowfall.com. We're feeling pretty bullish. So we want to see how this goes. But if this build looks pretty good, I would say that it is somewhere in the very near future. So that's super exciting. I mean, you guys who've been following us a long time know that we don't drop, terms like alpha and beta lightly. We were in pre-alpha forever, longer than most companies, in fact, before we called it. So beta is a big deal for us. This version is really cool because it has we call it the calling internally. It has some really, really cool features in it that we've been waiting for. The revised forts now that give you a PvP way of capturing a location that will produce mass quantities of stone and timber and ore. Those are in here. The new smaller keep is in here, which is for it gives basically equal points, but it's a way for smaller guilds to capture location and be able to have a slightly easier time defending it because it's kind of just tighter. And a host of other stuff. There's so much stuff in this build. It's hard for me to even remember all the things that went into this one. So we also had significant frame rate and server-side performance improvements hit on this one as well. So if you haven't taken a look at us now, given that we are doing a full wipe, if you haven't looked at us in a while, now is a great time to jump back in and kick the tires. We also have now 2 of the 3 chapters of the new player experience online, the goal of which is to teach the player how to play our game before we dump them into the competitive PvP worlds, where if they didn't know how to play the game, they would just die and have a terrible experience. We don't want that. We want you to at least know how to play the game. It's not very long, so it's not like we drag you through a big level treadmill or anything like that. Usually we're finding that players get in, and even if they don't have a guild to support them, within a couple hours, they're off to the races. If they do have a guild to support them, it might be down to minutes.
And you know what, Todd? We also got some significant tech features on the back end that we've been waiting for forever in 125, like the ability to make loot tables different.
That cat's killing me, by the way. You're ridiculous. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He's going for my beard. Yeah. He finds it fun as well.
Okay, loot tables.
Loot tables that you can do based on world band. This wasn't a piece of tech we had before. We can now say this only drops in this chest in a dregs world versus dropping in all of our world bands. We've also got more pack pigs. Again, their spawners are now actually scaling based off of siege time.
Right.
So during
caravans
siege time,
increase during peak as well, for sure.
Right. So the forts will have the same behavior. You won't see more chests, but you see potential for better stuff and more stuff in chests during an active siege in the forts. So since you guys typically get the thing we finished as it pushed to live, so 5.125 is pushing to live, the team has already started working on our next milestone, which you heard me call 6.100, and some of the bigger player-facing features in that one are, hey, new mounts, and in fact, the appearance of mounts underneath your body when you're running around. This one's been a long time, because you guys have had the mount functionality now for, I think we've had it in for over a year since I just gave you the movement speed buff.
Yeah, it's the Holy Grail coconut mount, though, right? It's you get the speed buff, but you don't actually. It doesn't have any cosmetics, so that's changing. In fact, I think you guys have probably only seen concepts of the mounts because that's what's been up ever since Kickstarter, right? It's been up on the Crowfall website. So did we get some snapshots of what some of those things look like now that they're fully rendered? Because they look pretty cool. Yeah, I think it's just another piece, right? You can kind of see that we had a giant checklist of things that we needed, and bit by bit they're coming. Campaign rewards is another one that's not on yet, but it's going to be coming during beta. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about campaign rewards. This design is actually locked and it's made its way. So campaign rewards are actually multi-vector. So what I mean by that is that we're not just going to be doing, you guys, if you're not familiar with the divine favor system, we basically have each campaign set up to where you earn points along three vectors: glory, wealth, and power. Glory is generally speaking about sacrificing things to the gods. We just added in this version that came out relic items because we found that too often that was being done by players in off hours, and it was a PvE activity, and we wanted a PvP solution to that. So those relics are in now. If you go and collect a relic, it's worth some giant multiple of the kind of things you would get off of just farming. So I think that's been a big, vast improvement. So glory, wealth is about building up your strongholds, right? So building your keeps up, adding buildings, largest, highest ranked building, most keeps, most forts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all about capture, of building of your stuff. So I shouldn't say forts anymore because forts have changed their purpose. And then lastly is power, which is straight out capture mechanics, right? Taking over land, holding on to land, having the lowest capture penalty pool, things like that. So we're doing multi-vector rewards, which means that we will do overall campaign rewards for winning, right, for getting the most points and everything. But we'll also be doing smaller and secondary rewards for individual areas. So we could have a reward that says, hey, if you did in one of the top 3 guilds that ranked in wealth only, well, here's some really cool wealth related rewards that you guys will like. And our goal in doing that by having multi-vector rewards is to keep people playing, right? Is what we've seen is there's a natural tendency for players, if they get into a game, to check the scoreboard, and if they don't think they have a chance of winning, a lot of times they'll just bail out, right? You see this in MOBAs all the time, right? People log in and within the first 5 minutes, they feel like it's not going their way, so they log out. So the goal of this is to give people, like Civilization does this very well, multiple vectors, multiple ways to win, is it gives you a chance to say, okay, well, we're not going to win in power, but look, we're actually doing pretty well in glory, or we're doing really well in wealth. And that wealth reward looks really cool. That's a really cool Malachi statue that's ebony and it glows. I think I'd like to have that for my EK. So we're going to go ahead and go for that reward and play out the rest of this campaign, even though we're not going to win the big grand prize. So I think that system will be very cool. Interestingly enough, we were able to get a lot of this is totally inside baseball, but I think it's cool, so I'm going to tell you anyway. We were able to get a lot of reuse out of the divine favor system for the reward system, because effectively the way the divine favor system works is you have a card, and that card has a little image, and it has a name, and it has a rule, and then underneath that it has an accumulator. And the accumulator will say something like, hey, every time a guild member cashes in this into sacrifice, I want you to count up the number of experience points, or every time you capture a location. So the accumulator is basically accumulating something. So we're reusing that same system to make reward cards that have an image and a name and a rule. Only the rule in this case is accumulating divine favor points from the same system, just reused. And instead of awarding you divine favor points on the output, it rewards you now rewards, which is really cool. It was basically a little single-use recursive loop of using a system that we'd already put a bunch of work into. So again, inside baseball, I know most of you don't care, but I think that's really cool. So
question, are those rewards per season or end of campaign?
right now they're end of campaign. So we potentially could open it up to make it per season and do seasonal rewards. We even talked about ability to do like individual rewards as well. When you log in, you can check and it'll say, hey, here's some individual rewards that don't give your guild any points, but they might give you something that you think is cool. Like here's a stack of a bunch of, purple ore or whatever. Oh, that's really cool. I might go ahead and go do that. That's another way we could extend the system. We haven't done that yet, but we are talking about it internally because I think it could be really cool. If we feel like the seasonal rewards will actually lead to increased retention and stickiness in the campaign, then I'll definitely consider them, because I think that's key. That's what I'm really trying to do, is I want to keep people playing, right?
Right, and what's great is once we have the system, it's more about extending it to like, oh, just tweak it this way and that way, rather than let's build this whole new giant thing. And what you're seeing right now is we're getting to a point with a lot of our stuff where there are a couple new systems coming online, but in a lot of cases, we're just tweaking existing things. I mean, that's how we got the mini keep in 5125, right? It was just a subset of the first keep that we put in 115 or 110, in fact.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So it's a nice place to be there. And what's great about us starting to talk about beta and bringing in more people is we have more people that we can listen to and get more feedback from. Because, again, a lot of us who have been here for so long, we're always just so in the weeds, we don't get a lot of the fresh perspectives from a lot of new people coming in and giving us their view as the first time looking at this. And thankfully now we're in a place where we can start inviting those people because the game is telling you what to do through the NPE 1 and 2 that we put in, right? So it's a really great place to be in. Rather than talking about stuff, we're showing you and you're playing that stuff and able to give us actionable feedback that we can react to. So I'm super excited about all of that.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, so there's a general high level overview of campaign rewards and where they're going. I will say that I think I have a suspicion, and we'll see. I am sometimes right and I'm sometimes wrong on these. You always feel that way. You're like looking into the into the, I'd say crystal ball, but it's really more like one of those crazy 8 balls where you shake it and it just says ask again later. But I have a suspicion that campaign rewards of any type will actually be a significant driver on player behavior. What we found back when we did the campaigns for the gods, right, where it was a very simple reward. It was basically like, hey, this is the War of Malachi, and here's a badge that has Malachi's sigil on it. And if you win, it's gold, and if you don't win, then it's going to be silver. That alone actually sparked a pretty significant spike in competition. Like people really do. Once there's something on the line, they really do engage more. And so I think that'll be really interesting. This particular set of campaigns that we're running here in this next version, by the way, I guess we should call out because we talked about it a little bit last time that players had made a suggestion and we said we would consider it. So not only we consider it, we actually did it in this version, which is creating a cross-continent campaign map. So the version of the dregs that's going to come up next is actually a US and EU campaign where we have siege windows firing that are convenient for both groups. So I think that'll actually be great. It also will increase, in theory, the amount of player population that we're going to get because those guilds will be able to get in and kind of scrimmage with each other. So I think that's going to be really fun. So I that was something that I meant to mention earlier, but I forgot, was that we're going to actually be able to have the intercontinental campaigns coming in this version, which should be pretty cool.
Do you say if there's going to be anything that's different about the rewards for winners of dregs campaigns? Or do they just fit into the description you gave? Is there any?
Well, actually, no. Yeah, it's an excellent point. Is this reward system is generalized so that we create reward cards just like we create the divine favor cards. So we will create different decks of rewards that we'll use for the dregs versus the other world bands. So dregs will, and keeping with our general philosophy of risk and reward, the riskier the world is, the higher the stakes and the better rewards that you're going to get out of it. So dregs will have a deck that is stacked with better rewards because we actually want to reward the players who are willing to go there and risk it. And then if you want to go on the lighter worlds, you can. The rewards aren't going to be as good, but they're still going to be better than if you stay in the EK or if you sit around in your in the God's Reach all day, which you can still do. It's just that ultimately that's not where the best stuff in the game is going to drop.
Okay, so we're going to talk about alliances. Yeah, yep. So I talked to Charlie this morning. The work is underway, and he says it's going well. So alliances will be part of our next milestone as far as we can tell. It's looking good. So I was really excited about this feature because I remember when 5.1.10 came out and there was lots of small guilds and they were playing together, but they kept hitting each other and dealing damage and they just had to worry about things that they shouldn't have to worry about. Now, in the future, in 6.100, they will be able to create that alliance and they will not be damaging each other.
The challenge that we have with alliances is if you allow alliances to start to pool their points together, then it creates a whole bunch of weird secondary and not necessarily by design behaviors. For example, I'll wait until the end of winter and then I'll just find 5 other guilds and we'll all ally with each other at the last minute to pool our points to just win. And that's not really what we were going for. And then I could put on limits saying, okay, well, you can't ally during winter, but now it's like, well, but what if that also, the downside of that is now I can't have allies during winter. So most of these issues popped up in terms of scoring, right? I didn't like a situation that forced guilds who don't want to ally because if they don't, they can't be competitive. So the first stage, I kind of, as I often do with design problems, I broke it into two parts. Part one is I just want to be able to work with these guys to fight those guys over there. And to do that, it's more a question of friendly fire rules, your guards not attacking me so I can use your services, so I can stage a fighting force out of your fort or your keep. So we're going to solve that problem first, which is we're going to allow alliances. And if you think about it, this actually has a lot. This is basically like a group system for guilds. It's I can invite you. They're temporary. They're not. I didn't want to lock anybody for the duration of the campaign because I like shifting alliances, and I didn't want alliances to be something that exists outside of the campaign. I want to be able to fight with this guild in this campaign, but be their enemy in this other campaign over here because we may be in two campaigns at once. So it's basically where we landed on the phase one of this thing is that it's a grouping system for guilds. I can invite Blair and his guild into mine, and we become an alliance. And in the middle of the fight, I can decide, you know what, screw this guy, and I can break that alliance, and my guards will turn on him, and suddenly friendly fire rules go into effect or flip. So that's phase one is not to do scoring. Phase two, which I think this is what I'm leaning towards right now for scoring, though again, this is a really gnarly problem, is to have a separate once campaign reward system is online, is to have a separate scoring mechanic for alliances and individual guilds so that we have some rewards that are given specifically to alliances, but other rewards that are given to individual guilds. So if I'm the top guild and I did better than any other guild out there, we can be rewarded for that. But if I'm really the top guild and I'm willing to take on all the alliances as well without allying, that's an even bigger reward. So if we create multiple vectors, which the campaign reward system allows for, I think that'll tackle that problem. For right now, the first thing we're going to get in is the basic not scoring version, because I think that's like the 80-20 rule. It gives us 80% of the win for 20% of the work. The scoring thing is going to be obnoxious. I don't know if it'll get in by launch or not. Let's see how campaign rewards goes, because that has to be in by launch, and then we'll take another look at it and see.
For me, it was a particularly painful issue when we made a significant leap from our last year's update that was up for 9 months or whatever. And it was a great update because it had been the first thing. It was like almost a year of development. And I watched these smaller guilds just struggle to play, right? So our organized guilds, they had no problem with it, and they got all the new features, and it was great. The little guys, though, they just had a real problem. They want to keep their small guilds because they want to keep their names, but they didn't have a way to not damage anybody, to take towers together, and it just it was painful. So beyond everybody screaming for the actual feature, watching you guys play on Twitch is always awesome for us because we actually get to see how you guys are using the systems. In this case, it was just like, oh man, this is just so painful. And I apologize for that, but we just hadn't built it at the time. So I'm glad we're taking the time now, and we're at least getting it so that you can log in at night. And if a couple small guilds want to be part of the same alliance, they can do that.
So, okay, next one is EK loops. So this is one that has been brought up many times to us because we are starting to get to that stuff now. So in advance of getting the EKs, what's the purpose of the EKs? So the purpose of the EKs is basically a combination of an economic purpose and a social purpose. The economic purpose is that we want people to be able to build their EKs into basically market worlds, if you will. So I can prop my EK, I can drop a bunch of vendors there, I can drop crafting stations there, I can go there and I can build really cool wares, and I can make myself a known destination that players come to. Again, I'm not saying we're there now, but we are moving in that direction. We haven't spent as much time on EKs really for the last year or 18 months because we've been so concentrated on the campaign worlds. So while the EKs was kind of on pause, we put vendors into the temples to give players a way to go and drop vendors there because we knew the EKs, they were kind of flimsy, meaning they didn't stay up very long. After the last player left, they would spin down immediately. So that's the kind of stuff we're fixing now. So the first thing I did is I took in this version the kind of the shim that was in place there. We took that out. So the vendors are nobles. So that means that there will no longer be that rush to go and grab all the vendor slots. That's going to be gone. We do have a free city zone coming into the Dregs worlds to allow players to drop vendors. And the goal there was to have enough vendor slots and have the timeout on them fast enough that it would be incredibly painful to monopolize all the slots. That was the goal there. And the reason for that is because those worlds are embargoed. So because they're embargoed, that means having the EK as the marketplace for them, the Eternal Kingdom as the marketplace for them, doesn't work very well because you'd be chewing up all of your embargo tokens, bringing stuff in and out as a merchant. So we wanted to give the merchants a place in the campaign world to go and conduct their business. So the EK things that we need to fix and that are currently in the works. First of all, there was no tutorial at all for how so we had all this functionality about being able to make people vassals so they could drop buildings on your world, and you can drop mountain ranges, and you can drop creeks, and you can drop hills, and you can drop buildings, and you can snap together castle walls. I mean, all of this stuff was in, and none of it was explained. So we went ahead and put in at least a couple of very simple quest lines with a couple quest givers. So at least you're now exposed to the system. It'll tell you, like, that's a world bank. Import your stuff, your campaign or your backer rewards through the world bank. And if you want to drop a house, here's how you do it. So at least we gave a basic there. The other thing that we're doing is we are increasing the max concurrency, meaning how many players can log into my EK before it hits max. And this is how that's going to work. So you have parcels of land that you drop into your EK, and those parcels of land, the size and the amount of stuff you can build on them varies based on the type. So if I drop a city parcel, it's going to be bigger and allow a lot more buildings and walls and stuff than if I drop a village, which is going to have a lot more buildings and walls and stuff than if I drop a homestead, which is like the smallest of the buildable areas. So looking across a world that has all the different parcels installed, you say, what is the high watermark? What is the largest type of parcel they have installed? Okay, well, this world has a city or even has two cities. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever's the maximum one. That sets your concurrency. So if you've got a homestead, then your homestead says, sorry, this is really a one-player world. Your max concurrency is 1. Okay, I bump up from a homestead to an estate. Your max concurrency is now 3. Okay, I jump from an estate to a village. My max concurrency is now, I can't remember, it's 15 or 30 or 60. I can't recall at the top of my head. Eventually, if I get up to a capital or a province parcel, I have 120 people in my EK at one time. So if you remove that parcel, then that max is going to fall back down. It's not going to kick people off of your server, but as they leave, they won't be able to come back. So that max actually adjusts in real time as you're adding and removing parcels. So what this will do is it gives a natural progression to people to want to install the bigger and cooler and harder to get, frankly, parcels on their EK, because that will give them more traffic. It'll give them the ability to handle more traffic. We haven't put in yet the sorting and stuff like that, but and this will be coming later, but I would imagine then we'll make your sort on the list a function of population and also a function of what you've built on that world. So if you built something that's really lively and really cool, you're going to naturally flow up the list. And I have some more ideas on how to maximize that, but I'm not quite ready to talk about them yet. So okay, so that covered for EKs. Removing the vendors, what's the purpose? How do you increase your max concurrency? How do you sort? And the last one is then uptime. And the answer on that is we're just increasing the uptime. So we've done some of that now. We're going to do that in measured steps because running these servers in the background actually cost us money. And as long as players are in and playing on the EKs, great, no problem. What I don't want is a whole bunch of EKs spun up with nobody in them costing us money, because that's not helping us get this game done.
Will Thralls be available in the EK crafting station?
Yeah, and that is currently up for debate. The EK is the safe spot, and while we do want to encourage people to use them, we don't want to pull everyone out of the dregs.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me use my distinction real quick, because it's kind of an interesting one. So if the answer was, I can get a thrall in the dregs, I can bring it back and I slot it and I get a benefit now for some period of time or some number of uses, that's fantastic. I would actually love that, because that adds to the dregs EK loop that we want. If it's, I just want to be able to spawn stuff in my EK so that I can actually go get it there and I never have to participate in the dregs or deal with anybody in the dregs, that's what we don't want. We don't want a situation where literally somebody can go off and because they this is why you notice all the resource partials that are in the EKs only give baseline resources like knotwood and stuff
Yeah.
like that, is because if they gave better resources, frankly, people would just sit there all day and all night churning out resources and not participating, because it's, again, risk reward, right? There's zero risk in your EK because you can literally block everyone else out of it and and just sit in a corner if you want to. So for that reason, the reward has to be correspondingly low. So something I would like to see is the ability to bring things from the dregs back, and for a limited period of time you could do some harvesting. So for example, Blair and I have talked about, hey, let me get some kind of an egg or something, a seed that I can get only in the dregs, but I plant it in my EK, and for the next 3 weeks it's generating some harvestable. That would be fine. I'd be okay with that, because effectively all that's really doing, it's a zip file that lets me bring stuff out of the dregs for less export tokens, but I then have to actually work that resource to get the benefit of it.
Yeah.
That doesn't break the loop.
Question 1. Roads don't seem very provide the Trailblazer buff, and players are mainly mounted on roads. Roads also don't connect to one side of the map or the other. Okay, so part 1 of this question is, you may not know it because we sadly don't have a way to examine what a buff on you is doing unless we make that a passive buff, but the road providing a 15% mounted movement speed increase as well. So roads are always useful to everybody, whether you're on foot or whether you're mounted. Okay. Question 2, do you have any future plans for flawed assemblies in crafting? And for those who don't know, during the assembly phase, when you hit that assemble button, there is a die roll, and you can actually die roll. This is why you build up against it with an assembly stat, and it creates what we call a flawed assembly. It drops it to rank and quality, and it prevents you from experimenting. Charlie and I have long talked about putting in a way that you can buy your way out of that with dust or something. And that's definitely something we want to try and see if we can squeeze in during beta. So it should be there so you get the stat and it's important to you. It's like progression. However, when you get struck with a streak of bad RNG or whatever, you should have an option to buy your way out of it if that is available to you. And so yes, we have a plan for it. It's just alliances came in front of it. Okay, cool. Question 3. Can we get faster resurrection timers in the Eternal Kingdom, God's Reach, and the Infected? So this is a pain point that I absolutely know about, but it's something we put in to prevent zerging behavior in the dregs. Unfortunately, we only have one knob on how long you increase time for whenever you die. However, we are working on it in beta, and we will get a way to have a different res timer knob based on the world ban, because it is particularly painful in God's Reach and the Infected, and it doesn't need to be. But more importantly to us was, is it going to be painful there and broken in the dregs? But no, dregs is actually the most important where that thing exists for. So unfortunately, the other worlds suffer until we have individual knobs per world, but we will get that one in beta. Okay, question 4. There is no variance in damage amount for powers, or I'm sorry, the no variance in damage for powers seems to be working well on test, because that's where you guys first saw it. Hasn't helped figure out anything. So for many updates, I had to answer the question about why do quivers not increase bow damage? And quivers actually always did increase bow damage. It's just you couldn't see it because it got washed out in this min-max roll that we did in the combat formula. Now that the min-max roll is gone, and you just always, when you do this power, you produce a certain amount of damage, it's actually easy for us to see where things are working and where things aren't working. Where we found something that wasn't working is armor penetration is not working at all for player versus players, but it is working against NPCs, and it is being mitigated twice. So this was a last-minute discovery that we found on test once you guys started testing this thing. We made the change, but we didn't put it into 1.2.5 because it was at the last minute, and then I didn't want to risk breaking the rest of the game, tweaking the core combat formula at the last minute. So we moved that work into 6.100. It's already been done, and we're already sussing out all of the problems that it may or may not have caused, which is what QA does. So a change to penetration is coming for player versus player, because you're going to see it doing nothing in the 1.2.5 cycle. and by the time you guys get it, it will no longer be double reduced by your core mitigation value. Okay, question 5. Some classes are able to equip a shield through disciplines, but they don't get the block power with it. And this was just a discipline call when we made the disciplines 2 years ago. Things have changed, so we can look about seeing if we can just put block on shields, because our systems totally support that now. So we might just make it a part of equipping a shield. You just automatically get granted the block power for those that want to use it. And 6, can you allow disciplines to be swapped in the EKs? This totally seems reasonable, because I know how much testing you guys are doing in the EKs, and it's a pain in the butt to go to a temple. So we'll look and see if we can get that in sometime during beta.
Yeah, I actually was talking to Onrez about that offline a little bit. I was asking him, so I mentioned earlier that we tried to move the temple to no longer be the default marketplace because it was undercutting the role of the EKs.
Yeah.
And I asked him the other question of, okay, so what are the things that you guys need from the temples that are causing friction? Basically, it's not that you can't do your work, it's that you're constantly having to run back to the Home Depot to pick up more tools. And so I've got a kind of a running list of what those things are, and we're not going to just grant them automatically, but I do definitely want to take all of those things and make them things that you can build or craft or acquire and add to your EK so that your EK can be self-sufficient. So right now, it's that the temple functionality was here, the EKs were here. With this removal of that, we pulled the temples down, and we added the MPE to the temples, to the EKs. That bumped them up a little bit. We're really close to flipping that line, at which point the EKs will once again be the EK market. And back the last time we really had that thing, the other side of the equation wasn't really firing right. It was pre-dregs, and pre-War Tribe Blue was pre a lot of stuff, frankly. So I'm excited to get that back online, I think.
Okay. Question 7, can we get a way to mass create non-serialized items? Yes, this ticket has been made. It's going to happen sometime in beta. Basically, for anything that doesn't have a serial number and just produces a fixed quality outcome, like all of the fuels that we've tagged in there and other things, you'll just have a little quantity there, and you can. Just
right. This is not as good as
factories.
I just got a note, by the way, to try and boot your EK now and see if it works. So guys, give it a shot. Let me know. So yeah, it's not factories, but for things that are not unique at all, can I please just create a stack at once? And so that is in the list, and we're trying to get that done as soon as we can. I don't know where it falls. I don't know if it's in the next update or the one after that, but I do know it made its way through the list and it has been requested.
Yep. So good stuff coming there.
All right, there you go. EK.
And we get to announce the Crow reward for August.
Yeah.
We're going to give you the gun show emote when we get the emotes working. That's actually the emotes are all done. We just don't have a good way to do a / emote yet. In fact, I have to write a document on it so we can get it in one of the upcoming milestones.
So we tried to skip around. You'll notice from one month to the next, it's not just, hey, another weapon skin. And the next month, another weapon skin. And the next, right, we try to mix it up and come up with different ideas. And the reason that, at some point we felt like as a company, we would do better to thank you guys for already having backed us rather than constantly hitting you with an email that says, here's some new stuff, buy it. So it was just like, you know what, rather than every email basically being a pamphlet and a catalog to try and sell more stuff, let's just start actually every month giving you something cool. So that's where that idea came from. And I'm glad we did it. I think it's pretty cool. So I think we're actually we're over time. So I think we're probably nearing the end of this month's Q&A. I do think we covered a hell of a lot of stuff, and I think that you guys have a big juicy build waiting for you on live. So my recommendation would be probably end it here, and next time around, if we're ready, we talk about disciplines. Okay, guys, so thank you very much as always for tuning in and hanging out with us for the last hour and 15. Be sure and hit us up with your questions for next time. Thank you so much for those of you who help us by playing on the test server. Excited to see some of you who we haven't seen in a while coming back once we go into beta, and things are looking up. I'm really, really excited. So thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for coming out. See you
Thanks.
on live.